Enter Uzumaki Naruto, Graduation and the Eye of the Dragon Clan. A forgotten or perhaps never recorded legend from long ago speak of fierce battles between several of the most prominent shinobi clans in existence. Elite mercenaries for hire with strength unmatched for several decades. At some point, three of these unrivaled mercenaries marched off their battlefields to engage in repeat alliances and brotherly fighting. It all started more than 80 years ago. The world was engulfed in a constant state of war and bloodshed. Typical of that, countries clashed time and time again in pursuit of ever-increasing power and the expansions of their own respective territories. In those times, ninjas, a type of samurai who had forsaken all manners of honor and ethics to gain further power, were merely individual clans for hire acting as armed militia, each of which readily would fight for a country provided that the price was right. Among them, three stood out as the strongest by far. The Uchiha clan, warrior elites with unmatched control over fire-based abilities, unique chakra signatures, and the much-coveted Sharingan eyes. The Senju clan of the forest, masters of earth and water-based manipulation, further backed by enormous amounts of physical strength and chakra control. Then there was the Ryuo clan, brilliant tacticians with mastery of hellish ninjutsu techniques of unmatched destructive force, all backed by incredible speeds. However, even among the three clans themselves, individual members were exceptionally gifted with a whole new level of talent. Of them were Uchiha Madara, the founder of the Uchiha clan who broke power barriers with chakra that far exceeded any recorded limits. Senju Hashirama, the founder of the Senju clan, and only known member capable of using the scared Mokutan style of ninjutsu. Then there was Vayeblin, the founder of the Ryuo clan, and only man successfully capable of summoning the uncontrollable Dragon Lord. Each men of promising ideals and dreams bitterly waged contests against one another for many years to come. Then, though the reason was never made known, the three come together as a whole and gave birth to Konoha no Sato, convinced that together they would strive under a peaceful existence. Neither group had any idea how the actions of their leaders would affect the future to come. Neither save for those three historical men holding kunai behind their backs as they shook hands. Konoha was a ninja village of the highest stature in the warm season lands of Fire Country. More often than not, the village hidden in the leaves had been hailed as both a mother of mercenary wunderkind and a home of glorified headhunters, otherwise known most commonly as shinobi. Depending on whom one listened to, many could argue that Konoha was by far the best shinobi village in existence. Not surprisingly, there are thousands of rumors surrounding the innumerous exploits of the Leaf and the vast array of clans that inhabit her walls, most invariably involving the unexplained or outright unbelievable, especially those of an elite among elites group residing beyond her walls yet still fully aligned with her, all of which are carefully guarded secrets in which none are ever available for comment. Consequently, Konoha no Sato continues to be the focus of much wild speculation, ire, resentment, praise, and intense debate worldwide. Idealized and vilified in equal doses of measure, the Leaf is perhaps one of the most fascinating and enigmatic sights of our times. Naturally, for such a promising village to exist and strive under the weight of the dark secrets it carries just as much as the good ones, a certain sense of order must be maintained. Without that order, the entire foundation would have fallen apart at the stems. However, as is expected in any place where people may live, there are those who derive pleasure in healthy bouts of chaos just as readily as peace. Commonly called the bane of Konoha and resident pariah, said person was currently up to mischief as usual, dashing at above-average speeds down the peaceful streets of the sun-bathed village was a 12-year-old boy with hair of the brightest blonde. The young menace and prank-loving terror was clad in a blindingly bright orange and blue two-piece jumpsuit. Since he currently had his jacket tied around his waist by the sleeves, nothing barred the plain black t-shirt he wore from view. Taking up residence atop his untamed locks of spiked feathery hair were a set of green goggles of a decent quality. The eyepiece that would have hid his shiny orbs of the brightest blue served as a very special symbolic meaning for the lanky child in question. The bright eyes, in general addition to the loud color theme he seemed to favor, were rather complementary companions to the vulpine stripes on either of his cheeks. Lastly, his choice in footwear extended to a popular set of sandals that were near universally worn these days. Uzumaki Naruto was his name. The self-proclaimed future Hokage of the Leaf, master prankster and ally of ramen chefs with super cute daughters everywhere. Just a simple-minded, fun-loving good guy, really. To be completely honest, most people wouldn't have paid the kid much attention had he been someone else. However, this particular boy was not only notorious for his non-stop stream of pranks, but also due to something that easily fell into the aforementioned darker secrets category. It didn't help his case any that he was currently carrying a bucket of paint on his person with a grin that screamed naughty. Rather, it just drew the disapproving eye of everyone nearby even more. Lastly, to complete this nearly comical treat to the eyes, a duo of flustered men were chasing after the kid. Both men, who looked to be in their 20s, wore the standard issued apparel of the higher-ranking ninjas serving the village. That being a set of navy blue pants with matching long-sleeve shirts. Included were a pair of padded lime green jackets with several pockets embedded in the material. As something of a personal effect, they had applied several layers of bandage wrappings to their legs with small tool-carrying pouches fastened to the wrappings. The most important accessory by far were the addition of blue cloth secured to their heads upon which sat a shiny slab of metal with a leaf symbol carved in the exact center. These unique headbands differed from village to village and weren't so much for fashion as they were to signify one's alliances to the village in which they served. In this case, Konoha, a nice effect that surely would give the wearer a sense of belonging. However, at the moment, the men were wishing frantically that the ordinary piece of metal had some special means of capturing misbehaving children instead. The boy's jacket swayed in the breeze with each step he took, and he couldn't help but laugh at the helplessness of his pursuers. It seemed that no matter how fast the men ran, the semi-developed ninja in training would always be quicker. "Naruto, you little troublemaker. Today is the day your mischief ends," shouted one of the men, huffing and puffing after him. "Yeah, you're not going to get away with it anymore," bellowed the other while brandishing a fist Naruto's back. "Not going to get away with it, they say. Huh, these goons had a better chance of blindsiding somebody's grandmother than ever laying a finger on him." Thoroughly enjoying the attention, and ultimately the release his handiwork had net him, Naruto gleefully laughed some more before he leaped upon the rooftop of a shop in an impressive display of aerobics and leg muscle strength. Naruto's pursuers followed suit, and in a speedy blur of rapid motion, the trio begun leaping from rooftop to rooftop. Feats made possible by Uzumaki Naruto, since he was the future Hokage. "Damn it." "Shut up," replied the evasive boy to the men's treats as he leaped back to the ground with a laugh. The men followed right on Naruto's tail, and the potentially endless chase continued. In the biggest building in Konoha by far, an elderly man was carefully practicing his calligraphy skills upon a large piece of stationery, using a brush covered in ink. Lightly sucking on an old-fashioned pipe as he worked, the senior was convinced that absolutely nothing would spoil his day. Sarutobi Sasuke was his time-worn name. A man of completely gray hair with several age spots covering his still, in his humble opinion, handsome face. Beneath his brown eyes were stripes similar to those upon Naruto's cheeks. Coincidental? Perhaps. The man was also ironically wearing a bright orange kimono with grayish-brown kimono pants. Surely not every ninja in the village had such quirky taste in loud clothing. For crying out loud, the man was the Hokage, the professor and local jutsu geek of the village, as well as the current caretaker of the multi-purpose estate building in which he was currently working. He just happened to be wearing orange because he felt like it today. Ah yes, the jutsu geek. a title with a pretty nice ring to it. Wanted to know about a particular combination of jutsu or the elemental composition that made it up? Saratobi was your man. If one were capable of asking the deceased Shodai Hokage how his Mokuton techniques worked, he would have probably shrugged and said something to the effect of "fuck if I know." Now, take this same scenario and add the third to the question, and you'll probably end up with an earful of theories and facts showing how the manipulation of water combined with the manipulation of earth would do so, or such and such. All of which would be extrapolated in great detail, with the Sandame wearing a somewhat disturbingly gleeful grin on his face, best pulled off by a bookworm. Needless to say, the man wasn't known as the professor for nothing, being a jutsu freak long before the Great Shinobi War started. Either way, it was utter foolishness to regard the man as a bookworm. The man was a vicious fighter, after all, with unquestioned wisdom and an uncanny talent of blending God knows how many disparate elemental attacks into a nightmarish whole. Regardless, the room Saratobi chose to occupy at the moment was a spacious study that he often frequented when he didn't want to be disturbed. The interior of the room was painted in a dull yellow that fitted the mood rather well. The walls themselves displayed several scrolls upon which words of great wisdom, written in Japanese text, silently hung. Most of the scrolls were written by Saratobi himself with the purpose of passing on knowledge to those who willingly sought it wherever they went. The floor was made of highly polished wood that shone brightly in the sunlight filtering in through a nearby window. The normally cleared floor was also cluttered with several more blank scrolls, as well as two large wooden jars filled with fine writing ink. One section of the floor rose in an elevated staircase that was covered in a velvet reddish-colored carpet. Saratobi himself was kneeling upon this carpet with his scroll carefully propped up against the wall upon a piece of canvas. He had just completed his last expert stroke when a ninja of the leaf, dressed like the other two who were currently chasing Naruto, appeared out of thin air, it seemed. "Hokage-sama, we have a problem," urgently reported the intruding ninja in an annoyed tone, the village in general reserved just for blonde-haired pranksters. "What? Did Naruto do something again?" surmised the Sandame Hokage with a knowing glance. "Yes, he just vandalized the stone faces of the Hokages," replied the somewhat peeved ninja with a hopeless shrug. A mere glance out Saratobi's nearby window exposed, sure enough, for paint-covered stone faces that stood as the pride of Konoha before the ridiculous makeover the statues underwent. Each face proudly displayed the greatest Konoha ninjas that ever lived. Saratobi's own face was among them, forever preserving the days of his youth. Though currently there was a bright orange booger painted under his nose along with some rather tasteful pirate scars in the old man's opinion. Thank you very much. Hell, it was better than the ridiculous clown face the boy had painted the last time he pulled this stunt. A monument to the greatest ninjas in Konoha reduced to a child's plaything, thought Saratobi as he sighed in resignation to shorting out another of Naruto's pranks before chuckling. The kid just wasn't going to give an old man a break. Sure, Saratobi could appreciate a good joke from time to time. Anyone would after years of dealing with the stiffs that served as his personal counsel. But it was starting to get out of hand these days. That said, the third couldn't help but to commend the boy. For Cammy's sake, the child had not only scaled the rocky surface without the use of chakra, but had done so in broad daylight weighted down by heavy buckets of paint. Add in the fact that he pretty much remodeled the entire structure without once being noticed until the very end, and Konohagakure's bane had more or less screamed to the whole village that he was a real prodigy. Nothing like those arrogant brats who were called such simply because they had a little bit of talent using their bloodline limits. The young man had skills. Saratobi could already tell that Uzumaki Naruto would prove quite the asset to the unfair village he resided in one day. Surely in the near future. The two men were still chasing Naruto, or so they thought. "He went this way," shouted one of the men as he and his partner rounded a corner. Once the faint cry of the two pursuing ninjas faded completely, Naruto removed his camouflage covering. Clever use of a basic concealment tactic had allowed him to elude the frustrated ninjas with textbook perfection. Too easy, bragged Naruto to himself with a hearty laugh. In his moment of victory, Naruto never saw the figure standing behind him coming. "Hey, Naruto!" bellowed an enraged ninja with long brown hair tied in a gravity-defying ponytail. He had tan skin with a shallow scar running horizontally across his face. Like the other ninjas, he too wore the same standard-issue jounin to Chunin apparel. Naruto jumped maybe a good 5 feet into the air in fright. At the same time, he released a short-lived scream of surprise before falling on his butt. Looking back up, the Jinchuriki bore witness to the academically feared demon head technique that Irika-sensei was infamous for among his students. His oversized cranium returned to normal size soon enough, allowing the scarred man to properly glare at his prank-loving Cedo. Getting over his initial demon head scare, Naruto's expression became a tad indignant at being caught so soon and from behind a boot. "What are you doing all of a sudden, Irika-sensei?" demanded Naruto in annoyance once he recovered from his fright enough to fold his arms. "What are you doing before class? Not only did you miss most of the lecture, but you're pulling those stupid pranks again," countered Irika with emphasis on the word you. "When are you going to learn how to use your talents in a responsible manner?" Naruto, the scarred instructor, resumed in full lecture mode. Yeah. It's not my fault that the history of hand signs and their founders is the most boring class lecture on the planet," started Naruto while staring sullenly at Irika and picking his nose. The blonde was already tired of being yelled at. He had certainly gotten his fill of it for the day. The boy's dismissive attitude towards the dreaded subject of studying only served to summon a small vein in the schoolteacher's temple. "Ugh, you're impossible, Naruto. The purpose of studying is not only to expand your knowledge, but to supply you with a full understanding of your profession and the multitude of basic skills that makes it up. Simply knowing the origins of a given art is half of the battle, and most importantly, it will allow for improvising on the field, something you will have to do time and time again in order to survive." There was no way Irika could explain it any clearer than that. The stated words were a lesson speaking strictly from personal experience, something he had been trying to pound into the boy's head for 3 years now. Naturally, the mother hen in Irika was praying to whatever gods that existed out there that Naruto would miraculously listen to him for once. For a moment, it looked as if a breakthrough were beginning to establish when Naruto scrunched up his face in contemplative thought. Sadly, the blonde had pushed the crucial piece of information somewhere to the back of his mind, yet again, after deciding that all the thinking was making his brain hurt. Having nothing to say about the lesson, Naruto could only sigh at the punishment he knew was coming later. After picking himself up off the ground, Naruto did the only thing he would willingly think of when in the presence of an adult. He made a break for it. Irika merely sighed at Naruto's stupidity and reached into his pouch. In one fluid motion, Irika withdrew and twirled a long coil of wire above his head. Once he built up enough momentum, Irika hurled it at Naruto's feet, effectively binding his legs together. Before the retreating Naruto had any idea what happened, he fell flat on his face. Quickly, Irika pounced and proceeded to tie up the struggling blonde with some rope he had on hand for just such an occasion. Once Irika was satisfied, he gave a sharp tug on a length of the binding material, and Naruto, who pouted slightly, was escorted by Irika to the academy. The Ninja Academy was an aged building that had been built some 50 or 60 years ago. The exterior was painted completely in white with the exception of the front door, which was a fading red. Directly above the door was the Japanese symbol for Fire Country in which Naruto resided. Even higher above, that was the familiar leaf symbol that honored the hidden village of Konoha, not unlike how a national flag would. As far as Naruto could see, there were no windows, and the only hint of a play area was an old wooden swing tied to a nearby tree. Upon arrival, Irika immediately took Naruto to class, much to the blonde-haired youth's embarrassment. The classroom was, for the most part, plain with the exception of a few scrolls that adjoined the wall and a large chalkboard. The remainder of the room was filled with row upon row of tables perched upon steadily elevating platforms. These tables were filled with chattering students around Naruto's age that fell quiet when the classroom door opened. The minute the class saw Naruto's predicament, they all burst into laughter, causing Naruto's cheeks to flush with heat. The humiliation didn't end there. Once Irika got the class to quiet down, save for the occasional snicker, he immediately pointed out one of Naruto's biggest regrets. Listen up, Naruto. You failed the last final exam and the exam before that. You shouldn't be fooling around like that. If you have time to pull pranks, then why not use that energy to further your ninja training and studies, stated Irika bluntly. Never one to sit through a lecture, Naruto turned his nose up at Irika's forthcoming rant. A vein begun to throb in Irika's temple, and he immediately tried a new tactic. Irika turned to face the class with the danger signs of the fearsome demon head technique, giving fair warning not to interrupt him. Fine then, we're going to have a review quiz for the transformation technique. Those who already passed will have to line up as well, declared Irika suddenly. A declaration that may as well have been an order for the class to run a marathon, in their opinion. What? Groaned the class in unison at the injustice of it all, coupled with the bangs of heads slamming on desks. A dangerous eye twitch from Irika-sensei quickly brought about the rapid scrapping of chairs and shuffle of feet as the class hastened to follow their instructions. Once the students were properly lined up, Irika undid Naruto's bindings so that he could line up as well. All right then, now do we have any volunteers? Asked Irika with a clearly satisfied smile, earning Naruto several glares from his peers. They were short-lived, and almost immediately, a hand shot into the air belonging to a cute girl with long pink hair and emerald green eyes. The girl was dressed in a rose-colored outfit with a red ribbon tied on her head. She also was wearing navy blue shorts and open-toed sandals. Her shapely legs and arms were the only things she didn't have covered in an effort to augment whatever sex appeal she thought she possessed. "Haruno Sakura going," stated the girl as she clashed her hands together with a frown of concentration to form a basic hand sign. "Henge." A cloud of smoke enveloped her right then and there. When the smoke cleared, standing in Sakura's place was an identical copy of Irika-sensei. Elementary and infrequently used in the field, the technique was indeed still impressive and not too badly executed by the pink-haired girl. "Okay, well done," commented the real Irika with a nod of approval before he made a mark on his clipboard. "I did it," cheered the overzealous Kunoichi as if the task had been something extremely difficult. It probably was. Nonetheless, it was still rather bizarre to see an Irika look-alike bouncing girlishly on the balls of her feet. Eventually, the transformed Sakura was once again enveloped in a cloud of smoke as she reverted to her original form. The pink-haired girl turned towards a boy in the audience with a cheerful smile. "Did you see that, Sasuke-kun?" she asked happily. The boy in question was a serious-looking youth with spiky black duck-butt hair and black eyes. He was clothed in a dark blue open-collar shirt with a half-white and half-red fan symbol on the back. He also wore white shorts that extended past his knees. Added to the mix were white arm guards with blue edges and open-toed sandals. The fan on Sasuke's back was an insignia for Konoha's Uchiha clan, a group of adept fire and Jujutsu users. Sasuke didn't bother to answer or even acknowledge Sakura's question since Irika begun to announce the next student's name. "Uchiha Sasuke, you're next." Wordlessly, Sasuke moved into position in full view of the class and performed the same simple hand seal as Sakura. Likewise, the earlier results were repeated exactly, minus the creepy dance that no one should ever have had to see. "All right," acknowledged the real Irika with another nod of approval as Sasuke transformed back to normal and went to extend the pass line behind an irritatingly lovey-dovey Sakura. The Uchiha boy's prominent scowl did not go unmissed by most of the class, as he pointedly tuned out an oblivious Sakura's steady stream of ramblings and compliments. Save for a few dozen members from the female half of the group, anyone present would have testified to the Uchiha heir's stuck-up attitude towards others. There was certainly a lot to comment on concerning the icy head case, Yet it wasn't as if voicing them would really do much about it either. Mentally shrugging, Irika surveyed his clipboard once more and after making some notes called out the next student. Next up, Uzumaki Naruto. Before Naruto moved into position 2 of his peers, standing near him begun to complain. "This sucks," grumbled a boy with a long gravity-defying ponytail. The boy was wearing a net shirt with dark brown pants and a grayish-colored jacket with green edges. This was Nara Shikamaru of Konoha's Nara clan, a group of medical experts and shadow users. "This is all your fault," chimed in a pretty girl with long blonde hair and blue eyes. The girl was wearing a revealing one-piece purple dress with a wide collar. This was somewhat remedied by several bandages wrapped around her legs. She also wore white arm guards with purple edges and open-toed sandals. This girl was Yamanaka Ino of Konoha's Yamanaka clan, a family of floweriest and mind manipulation technique users. "Like I care," replied Naruto with an annoyed frown on his face. Quickly, Naruto strode into position to attempt the simple jutsu. Just a single hand sign and amateurish chakra manipulation would do, right? Unfortunately, nothing was ever simple or to be expected when Uzumaki Naruto was involved. After all, shinobi strived on the unexpected and Naruto had in bulks. With a look of concentration, Naruto's bluish chakra began to swirl around him, and he too vanished in a poof of smoke. However, rather than the Irika form that everyone was expecting, Naruto assumed the form of a perky and gorgeous blonde-haired girl with blue eyes. The girl wore her hair in 2 long pigtails, and like Naruto, had stripes on her cheeks. Naruto, as the creator had fondly dubbed his knockout counterpart, lacked only a few things, specifically clothing. However, as the smoke hadn't cleared, yet certain well-proportioned visuals remained hidden from sight. Naruto gave a seductive moan and winked in Irika's direction before blowing him a very sexy kiss. The act was all that was required to tickle the instinctive reactions of a typical male. Irika's mouth dropped open in pure shock before a heavy spray of blood began spurting from his nose. All of the guys in the classroom underwent similar bouts of nosebleeds, save suspiciously for one Uchiha Sasuke, while the girls merely blushed at the open display of their feminine anatomy. Naruto then transformed back to normal and broke up into crazed laughter. "How was that? I call it the dynamically amazing, sexy jutsu," cried Naruto between laughter. Irika quickly stuck 2 Q-tips up his heavily gushing nose and seemed beside himself with fury. The ultimate horror of the true Demon Headmaster move was revealed in an instant, though the Q-tips ruined the effect. "You idiot! Don't invent such a dumb technique," screamed Irika as loudly as he could, while flushing at the fact that he had been turned on by a male wearing a very convincing illusion. Naruto had a feeling that his punishment was only going to get worse after class was over. Damn it, groaned Naruto for what felt like the 100th time that evening. Irika had been quite forceful with his punishment by ordering Naruto to scrub the paint job he did that morning off of the Hokage monument by hand. It had been 3 hours since he started, and he still had 2 more statues to go. Luckily for him, the paint was still wet, or else the job might have taken much longer. "You're not going home until you clean it up good," yelled Irika from atop the statue Naruto was cleaning. "I don't care. No one's waiting for me at home anyway," countered Naruto a bit closer to home than he would have liked to admit to anybody. It wasn't a secret that Naruto had been orphaned since birth, but his lack thereof memories about his birth parents had always been a sore topic with him, mainly since it reminded him how alone he was in this place. Irika gazed at the stubborn ninja for several seconds in silent contemplation before he spoke again, this time in a more gentle tone of voice. "Naruto, what is it now?" grumbled the still very much irked blonde. "Well, if you clean that up, I'll treat you to some ramen tonight," replied Irika while thoughtfully scratching his chin and looking at the boy as if to say, "What do you think?" Irika had said the magic word. At the mention of ramen, Naruto loudly cheered in happiness. "All right, I'll do my best then," promised Naruto with a large grin while resuming work with even more energy than before, his troubles momentarily forgotten. It was nearing midnight by the time Naruto finished, and true to his words, Iruka took Naruto to the most famous ramen shop in Konoha. Ichiraka Ramen was more like a small stand than a shop, but the kami-scent smell of ramen and barbecue more than made up for it. Inside, Naruto and Iruka quickly took up seats at one of several stools in front of bar. The top of the counter was laden with a cup full of chopsticks, as well as a salt and pepper shaker and napkin dispenser. "Good evening, boys. What will you be having?" asked the shop's owner and chef, Tucci, a rather kind man who looked to be in his late 30s. Tucci had graying hair and seemed somewhat chubby. He was dressed in a simple robe with baggy gray sweatpants and a sailor's cap. His smile was warm and cheerful as he awaited their orders, particularly the round of his absolute favorite customer, Naruto, the ramen lord and 2 years defending champion of the yearly ramen battle royal. Depending on who one listened to, the stories of the ramen guzzling champ often hinted that he could even out-eat an akimichi. They wouldn't have been exaggerating. Naruto immediately requested his favorite bowl, miso pork ramen with a boiled egg. Iruka simply ordered beef and garlic ramen with sour cream and a fried egg. The successful and popular chef quickly prepared the orders and had his super cute daughter, Ayam, bring out the bowls along with complimentary glasses of water. "Please enjoy your meal," said Ayam with a golden smile of cuteness best pulled off by the girl next door. Ayam had light brown hair and brown eyes. Like her father, she too wore robes. However, she was wearing plain white pants instead of the baggy gray sweatpants that her father wore. For Naruto, the super cute ramen mistress was pretty much a sister figure to him, just as much as he was a kid brother to her. Though she often found it hard to keep up with the high-speed delivery of his ramen-y goodness during the Battle Royal competitions, the two were a winning team for 2 years running. Naruto took off his goggles, and with loud cries of "Itadekamasu," the ramen-loving duo begun to eat. Midway through the meal, Iruka begun to speak. "Say, Naruto, why do you vandalize the monumental stone anyway? Surely you know who the Hokages are, right?" asked Iruka in reference to the freshly cleaned stone faces. "Of course I do," replied Naruto before draining the broth in his ramen bowl. After finishing up with a lip-smacking, Naruto continued. "In other words, those who carry the name of Hokage were acknowledged as the #1 ninjas in the village, right?" asked Naruto thoughtfully. "I hear that the 4th one is a hero who protected the village from a monster fox." "Then why did you—" started Iruka before Naruto cut him off. "I'm going to receive the name of Hokage one day and become greater than any of the Hokages," stated Naruto with a wink. "Then I'm going to make everyone in the village recognize my powers. That was just my mark to tell everyone that." Iruka nodded and accepted the idealized, if childish, explanation. It wasn't like the thought was impossible. Regardless, Naruto turned to Iruka with an expression that could only be described as sly. "By the way, Sensei, I have a favor to ask." "You want another bowl?" guessed Iruka. "No, I was wondering if maybe I could try on that Konoha forehead protector," asked Naruto hopefully. "Oh, this?" asked Iruka while grasping the metal of the head guard. "No, this is proof that you graduated school and that you're a real ninja. You'll have to wait until you get yours tomorrow," declined Iruka with a kindly smile. "Meanie," moaned Naruto in annoyance. "Is that why you took your goggles off?" teased Iruka between laughter. "HMP, I want another bowl," demanded Naruto as revenge for Iruka's lack of cooperation. Iruka only groaned at how hard this was going to be on his wallet and was just about to dig said item out when he noted the sudden expression of melancholy on the boy's face. Piquing the Chunin's interest, Iruka shifted his position to fully take in the small boy beside him. "Naruto." The boy seemed to stare past his empty bowl for the longest, worrying the mother hen and his sensei the whole while before sighing. "Say, Iruka-sensei, can I ask you to be honest with me?" inquired the sun-kissed blonde quieter than usual. Warning bells sounded in Iruka's mind, and though Tucci was tending to a fresh batch of noodles, his posture had stiffened as well. Naruto was never this quiet. Hell, quiet and Naruto put together was an impossible equation, and yet here the boy was defying expectations yet again. Naruto had not earned the title of number one unpredictable shinobi in training for nothing. Of course, Naruto. If I can answer your question, I'll always try my best to do so. You know that, consented the brown-haired Chunin without the slightest hesitation. Anyone else might have been unfair or outright lied to the boy due to complicated reasons, and Naruto had picked up on that, it seemed. The blonde wasn't going to kid himself here. He had known for a while now that most of his so-called academy teachers had purposely been striving to sabotage his growth as a ninja. The most devastating method they could think of to do so was simply to deny him information and to never encourage him to take his potential that extra step further. That was just it. While dense at times, the boy was fully capable of amazing feats of brilliance. As a result, his true potential was directly affected by the encouragement he was given, something that Irika himself could readily testify to and praise the boy for. Simply put, anytime Naruto felt as if a teacher figure was going out of his way to help him, he would perform whatever task he was given flawlessly, or at least make a real effort that would bear fruit. In contrast, if he received no encouragement at all, he would either do poorly or not bother with the exercise at all in favor of thinking up new pranks. Likewise, in any group assignment with his peers, he participated substantially if working with encouraging friends, such as Hyuga Hinata or Akimichi Chuji. It would go in reverse if working with discouraging peers, such as Inazuka Kiba or Uchiha Sasuke. The whole deal was really simple. When people believed in him, he performed. As such, Naruto easily had the learning potential and talent to develop at unparalleled rates if only someone would give him a chance and a little bit of direction. The boy was what many would consider a real genius, and he would only continue to improve over time. Irika, while strict, openly acknowledged that and made sure that Naruto saw it too. The one true teacher in Naruto's life wouldn't lie, that the boy knew and believed with the depth of his heart. Naruto nodded and proceeded to speak. Just how well suited am I to even be a ninja at this point? I mean, until just last year, I didn't even know how to read before you took the time to teach me. I'm the dead last of the class this year, and nobody other than you and the old man are even bothering to train me properly. Can I really do this, Irika-sensei? To say that Irika was speechless was an understatement. Flabbergasted was the most fitting word for hearing the walking well of merit and determination expressing self-doubt. It only served to show that despite the inhumanly amount of scorn and vengeful wrath the boy suffered constantly, he did have a limit to how much he could take before he started to believe them. In other words, Naruto was still human. Human. The truth of that word brought a sad smile to Irika's face. The source was simply because he knew deep down that Naruto wasn't quite ready to become a ninja. It had nothing to do with his loud nature, choice in bright clothing, or ability. For Kami's sake, the boy had pulled off all sorts of off-the-wall pranks in a ninja village while barely ever being caught, and done so while wearing bright orange. No, the problem Naruto had was simply that he needed a lot more work on his basic skills. They truly were a mess. Honestly, Naruto, if you would just put a bit more effort into your studies and really practice all of your basic abilities, there's no doubt that you'll do just fine. I'm sure you're aware that the most important aspect of anything one might do centers around the basics. Once the basics are mastered, then theoretically, there is almost nothing you wouldn't be able to apply them to, the academy instructor explained. Naruto simply nodded in acceptance of the explanation and shifted his gaze to meet Irika's. I thought it might be something like that. In that case, would you help me work on my basic training? The blonde earnestly requested. His determined gaze, that many women found too cute for their own health, had taken over his facials. Once more, the scarred Chunin nearly freaked out. It was even rarer for Naruto to willingly beseech training when he could have been working on his latest prank instead. Well, sure, Naruto, but are you feeling all right? This has got to be the first time you've ever asked for extra training outside of your usual skirmishes with Sasuke. pointed out the Chunin while idly noticing Tucci was beginning to relax just a little. This got the boy grinning and chuckling. Huh, I'll beat Sasuke team soon enough, Irika-sensei. And I'll show everyone that I will become the best Hokage ever. If a little bit of extra training is all it'll take to get there, then I'm game no matter what. For emphasis, the boy patted his muscle confidently. The result was a fond smile from his observing teacher and Tucci as well, though as his back was turned, no one could see it. Now, this was sounding more like the Naruto they knew. Yeah, you most definitely will. And I'll be doing my best to help you get there, encouraged the school teacher. At this, Naruto grew excited. Then you'll... Irika nodded. I can't say that I'll be free all the time, but I'm sure I'll be able to work out something with Hokage-sama about additional basic training. Yay! Cheered Naruto excitedly, pumping both arms into the air. Thank you, Irika-sensei. You're the best. Irika laughed a little at that. That he most certainly is, chipped in Tucci himself, turning around with a smile of his own and 2 additional bowls of ramen in his hands. For the training days ahead, and good luck for your examination tomorrow, 2 bowls on the house. If Naruto was happy before, it quickly multiplied tenfold in the form of a very pleased grin. Yeah, itadakimasu, exclaimed Naruto before taking the bowl and digging in with gusto. Sarutobi gazed upon the rising sun with a smile of anticipation. Today was the day of graduation at Konoha's Ninja Academy, a day that had been long awaited by every man, woman, and child within the village. On this day, the academy graduates would become Konoha's new Genin-level ninjas. Suddenly, out of thin air, a leaf ninja appeared. More specifically, a member of the MBU Black Ops, a special branch of shinobi that personally serve under direct orders from the Hokage himself. Elites highly skilled in the art of silent homicide, among other things. This one was dressed in a type of gray sleeveless armor with a small ninjato strapped to his back. Reinforced gauntlets and night black pants completed the standard code of dress. All save for one thing, an animal mask to tell one apart from another while at the same time upholding complete secrecy to the identity of the agent. In this case, a lion mask. Sandame-sama, I've come to make a report, stated the visitor. Yes, what is it? Asked the third Hokage. The hidden sect has prepared its 3 most prized students to attend the Academy's graduation exam, vocalized Lion while producing a scroll bearing the Dragon Clan's insignia, which was 2 dragon wings with a fearsome eye peering between them. Here is a detailed report of the candidate's skills and personal information. Ah, excellent, voiced Sarutobi as he took the scroll. You have my gratitude. Dismissed, ordered the third, and in the blink of an eye the masked ninja was gone. It's been quite some time since new candidates from the Ryuo clan took part in the graduation exam. They must be very exceptional students, mused the Hokage to himself while unfurling the scroll. We will now start the final exam, Irika announced to the class. If your name is called, come to the classroom next door. The subject will be the replication technique. Naruto's mouth dropped open with shock. Nervously, he began to fidget in his seat like a girl who hadn't used the bathroom in a long time. If there was any technique that he was absolutely terrible with, it was the replication. Will Miss Domino Shishikura come to the testing room, please? Called Irika-sensei. There was a few moments of silence before possibly the most beautiful girl Naruto ever seen walked towards the testing room. The girl had black, waist-length hair which she wore in a ponytail. Her shining lavender eyes seemed to take on a pleasant, teasing look that complemented her perfect heart-shaped face. She was wearing a dark green jacket with a black t-shirt underneath and a pair of black shorts. Her clothing were fairly loose, but still failed to hide her generous curves. As if sensing Naruto's stare, she paused in mid-stride and flashed him a gorgeous smile before entering the testing center. Naruto felt his cheeks grow warm and his anxiety was momentarily forgotten. Who was that? I've never seen her before, thought Naruto to himself. Naruto remained in a stupor for several minutes wondering about the mysterious girl until he spotted her again. She emerged from the testing room with a huge grin on her face, and in addition to that, she was wearing a shiny new forehead protector. The girl practically skipped back to her seat as everyone began to applaud for her success. Naruto's nervousness returned in full after that, and he grasped his face in dismay. The next student was called into the room, but Naruto, in his foreboding thoughts, failed to hear the name of the candidate Iruka summoned. "A touch nervous, are you?" inquired a soft voice next to him. Naruto turned towards the speaker to find it was a young girl sitting next to him. The girl had dark blue hair that was cut short and seemed a little spiky in appearance. Her peaceful blue eyes seemed able to probe the depth of Naruto's soul, which unnerved the blonde-haired boy to an extent. Despite her piercing gaze, the girl had a serene air about her. She was dressed in a strawberry-colored top with a white skirt. She was also wearing two pendants around her neck. One had a blue gem, the other had a green one. She smiled upon seeing Naruto grant her his attention. "Who is she? I've never seen her before either," thought Naruto to himself in wonder. Realizing he was rudely staring at her, Naruto hastily answered her question. Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit nervous," admitted the blonde. The blue-haired girl nodded before speaking. "That's to be expected. Honestly, I'm a bit nervous myself," she said with a smile. Naruto smiled back, easily recognizing kindness when he saw it, before he extending his hand towards her. "Hey, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. One day I'm going to become the new Hokage," declared said boy as he introduced himself. "Really? That will be great. I'm certain that you'll be able to do it." "I'm Elaine Harime," responded the girl while extending her own hand and shaking Naruto's. Naruto's grin grew broader after the introductions, and he seemed quite pleased by Elaine's encouraging words. It was very rare to find someone who offered him any kind of encouragement. Naruto liked the feeling it seemed to bring. "Yeah, you're right, and I'm going to work really hard so that everyone will acknowledge my strength," bragged Naruto loudly. "By the way, where are you from? I don't think I've ever seen you before," asked Naruto curiously. Elaine grew thoughtful for a moment before responding. "I'm not really surprised. Very few people from the village have ever seen me. Domino too, for that matter." "Huh? Why's that?" asked Naruto. Elaine's expression grew troubled, and she gazed at the floor for a moment before speaking. "It's complicated, but let's just say I underwent some very special training when I was little and leave it at that," replied Elaine with some hesitation. "Special training?" repeated a confused Naruto. "Why is she acting so weird? Is there something she's trying to hide?" he silently thought. As if sensing Naruto's thoughts, Elaine abruptly changed the subject. "So Naruto, what do you plan to do after becoming Hokage?" Naruto's brain went into overdrive after that. In all honesty, he had never really thought about it before. After racking his brain for a moment, Naruto finally came to a decision and was just about to speak when Uzumaki Naruto came Iruka's long-awaited call, and with a feeling of dread, Naruto rose to enter the examination room. Lousy timing. Well, this is it. Good luck, Naruto," said Elaine cheerfully. "Thanks, Elaine," Naruto somehow managed to say through a cotton-dry throat as he headed towards the testing center. The first thing Naruto noticed upon entering the testing room was a table laden with forehead protectors. The sight only served to remind Naruto of his last two failed attempts, and, if it was at all possible, made him even more nervous. Stealing his resolves, Naruto stood before the examiner's table. Naruto's examiners turned out to be Iruka, who gave Naruto a nod of approval before readying his clipboard. The second was a silvery blue-haired man with black eyes and a warm smile. He too wore the common ninja apparel of the two goons that chased Naruto before. His name was Mizuki. "Go ahead when you're ready," encouraged Mizuki with a kindly smile. Naruto took a deep breath and closed his eyes in a frown of concentration. Like before, a swirling aura of bluish chakra began to surround Naruto. He quickly made a hand seal. "Bunsin no Jutsu, Kraid Naruto." There was a poof of smoke, and when it cleared, Naruto was standing in the same spot as before. However, laying next to him was a rather pitiful imitation of Naruto that looked more like a train ran over it several times. At that point, Naruto began to panic, especially at the sight of Iruka's twitching eyebrow and annoyed look. "You fail!" roared Iruka, much to the dismay of the blonde youth. "Iruka-sensei, his movement and stamina are good, and he did replicate. Maybe we can pass him?" piped to Mizuki, drawing a hopeful smile from Naruto. If Naruto had any hopes of passing the exam, they were quickly dashed by Iruka's next statement. "Mizuki-sensei, everyone is able to produce at least 3 replications. But Naruto can only produce one that will merely be a bother. I cannot pass him," stated Iruka simply. "I understand," replied Mizuki before Iruka dismissed Naruto with a wave of his hand. Naruto was crushed and left the room feeling both dejected and angry at the harsh truth of it all. He had failed for the 3rd year in a row. The happy chattering of all the new academy graduates and their equally happy parents seemed to go on for hours. Every single face in sight was lit with a smile that seemed to lift the mood of everyone present. Only one person remained oblivious to the contagious virus of happiness. Naruto sat alone on an old swing set beneath the shadow of a large oak tree. From time to time, he would shoot an envious glance at all the students who were talking with their parents. Naruto knew that as an orphan, he would most likely never get to experience that kind of happiness and love from any parental figure. Naruto tried to conjure up an image of the parents he never knew, but it was no use. With a depressed sigh, he resumed watching the crowd in silence. "It could have been worse, you know," came a soft voice from behind Naruto. He quickly turned around to find Elaine standing behind him. Like everyone else, she was wearing a forehead protector. "I guess you're right about that," replied Naruto as he resumed watching the crowd with another depressed sigh. "Congratulations," he said after a moment. "Thank you," she said while leaning against the tree next to Naruto. The two friends sat quietly like that for a while, and Naruto began to cheer up a bit due to Elaine's company. Elaine seemed to sense Naruto's uplifting spirit and choose that moment to speak. "I wouldn't have figured you the type to mope, Naruto. As a future Hokage, I thought you would have been inspired to train even harder," Elaine voiced her opinion with a smile. Naruto considered her words for a moment before he too began to smile. "Thank you, Elaine. You're absolutely right," acknowledged Naruto. "That's the spirit. I believe in you, Naruto. You know, you gave me confidence back there before the exam started," admitted the blue-haired girl. Naruto grinned at that before replying. "I feel the same way. Your support really helped me out back then," he admitted honestly. "I'm glad to hear that, Naruto. Which reminds me, you never answered my question from before. What do you plan to do after becoming Hokage?" asked Elaine. This time Naruto didn't have to think about his answer. "I'll make sure that nobody has to experience the same childhood I did," replied Naruto in a matter-of-fact tone. Elaine's expression softened somewhat, and she smiled again. "Then I look forward to that day very much, Naruto," said Elaine before standing up straight. "I'm sorry, but I have to go now. I'll see you around, okay?" she continued sadly. "Oh, all right. Guess I'll see you later then," replied Naruto with equal sadness. It never was easy saying goodbye to a friend. Elaine bowed respectfully to Naruto's back before turning and walking away. She took no more than 5 steps before glancing back. "Naruto," called Elaine. The blonde turned to see what Elaine wanted. The girl unfastened one of the pendants around her neck and tossed it to Naruto, who deftly caught it. The pendant in question was a shining blue gem encaged in a pure silver ring. The ring was secured to a chain that was also made of silver. "A good luck charm to help you on your quest to becoming Hokage," spoke Elaine in response to Naruto's surprised look before she resumed walking away. "Thank you, Elaine," thought Naruto to himself before he fastened the pendant around his neck. Naruto didn't know it then, but after that moment, everything changed. For everyone, but most of all for himself. Iruka lay wide awake in bed that night as he gazed upon the full moon through the glass dome of his ceiling. However, Iruka was gazing past the moon to his memories of the events of the day. For some time, he thought of the disappointed face of Naruto after he had literally robbed the boy of his dream again. Iruka wanted to pass Naruto very much, but he knew in his heart that the boy just wasn't ready yet, and that to pass Naruto now would have meant lying to him. Finally, Iruka's mind wandered to the conversation he had with the Hokage earlier that afternoon after the exam. Iruka approached the Hokage's office and quietly steeled himself for the lecture that the third was going to give him. As expected, upon entry, Iruka found the Hokage reviewing the examination results for the academy graduates. Not wanting to beat around the bush, Iruka spoke first. "You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama?" asked Iruka. The Hokage quietly rolled up the scroll he was reading and took a long drag on his pipe. After exhaling the sweet perfumed scent, Sarutobi spoke. "I'll get right to the point here, Iruka. I have been watching your interaction with Naruto for some time now. Admittedly, I fully understand how you feel at this point. Naruto grew up without the love of a parent, just as you have. The boy has been starved for attention for as long as I can remember. In a way, he's a mirror image of yourself, Iruka. Thus, he had to pull those pranks to get everyone's attention. Whatever the form, he wanted someone to recognize the value of his existence. Although he acts tough, Naruto is the one who is having a difficult time," said Sarutobi solemnly. Iruka mentally kicked himself. The conversation was about Naruto. Hearing the words of the third roused a memory from last night. A promise Iruka had made to help the boy truly improve as a shinobi. To say the least, the timing had been perfect. "Hokage-sama," begun Iruka, only to be silenced by the third raising a hand into the air. "I know, Iruka. However, before we address that, pray allow me to continue." Although it was a simple request, Iruka treated the words of the Sandaime as an order and so nodded his consent. The third eased back slightly in his chair and pulled open a drawer to rummage in for a moment. His hand came back out with a small black book which he neatly set in front of himself before closing the drawer and grunting slightly as his aging bones creaked with his movement. One ready, Sarutobi clasped his fingers together on his desk and proceeded to speak. "I feel that I must tell you this, Iruka, since you're the only person who has seen Naruto's potential just as I have. I'm sure you recall, but the cause of Naruto's need for recognition is due to the attack of the demon fox that lives within him. Furthermore, because of the nature of the fox's role in that incident, he has been shunned and hated for it," continued Sarutobi. Iruka did remember only too well the loss everyone suffered during that day. Iruka could still recall the terror he felt as he gazed upon the fearsome monster that threatened everything he cared about. More so than that, he could still remember the despair he felt after his parents were killed right before his eyes. They had died trying to protect both him and the village. Even now, 12 years later, the terror he felt at remembering that monster was very great. Figuring as much, the third's expression became thoughtful. In the long run, it can indeed be said that Naruto's dream might be tough for him, surmised Sarutobi after a moment of thought. "Oh, why's that?" asked Iruka, triggering a nod from the third. "As you know, only the adults that fought 12 years ago know that a nine-tailed demon fox is sealed in Naruto. I made that fact absolutely secret and severely punished those who broke the rule. Because of that, the children don't know about it. That is the only hope Naruto has really. The fourth Hokage wanted everyone to see Naruto as a hero, a living prison for the beast that nearly destroyed us," explained Sarutobi. Iruka nodded, being well learned in the tale. However, a certain scrap of information puzzled the Chunin. "A hero?" asked Iruka, in confusion. "What's so heroic about living with a beast like that inside you?" he wondered. Sarutobi nodded in confirmation before continuing. "It's amazing, really. The fourth chose a baby that just had an umbilical cord cut off and sealed the fox within him. Naruto became the container for the nine-tailed fox, but the adults of the village do not see Naruto as I do. There are even a few who believe that Naruto is the nine-tailed fox himself. The attitude of these people are being passed down into the children. Poor Naruto, I never knew, realized Iruka sadly. That is why I know Naruto can trust you, Iruka. You who, like myself, have never viewed Naruto as the Lord of Demons. So that Naruto can benefit just as much as yourself from that trust, I shall grant your request. At this, Sarutobi finally opened the black book to reveal pages of old parchment with the official Hokage's seal pressed into the pages. Seizing a waiting quill from its ink bottle, the third carefully crafted a note with special instructions concerning Naruto. Folding it neatly, the third handed the official document to Iruka. See to it that Naruto receives this note and delivers it to a certain person, Sarutobi instructed. Iruka caught the meaning behind his elder's words and nodded. I shall. Thank you very much, Hokage-sama, appreciatively voiced the man before bowing and turning to leave the room. Soon, the scarred instructor would be able to keep his promise. Iruka was jolted from his memories by frantic knocking at the door of his hut. Iruka-sensei, came an urgent shout. Iruka quickly got out of bed and opened the door to find Mizuki standing outside with a worried look on his face. What is it? Iruka asked Mizuki. Please come to Hokage-sama's place. It seems that Naruto-kun carried the scroll of sealing out, said Mizuki quickly in a single breath. What? The scroll of sealing? Echoed Iruka in disbelief. Naruto is dense, but not even he could be that stupid. Not wanting to believe the worst, Iruka quickly got dressed in record time. Naruto had just arrived at the designated hiding spot, which turned out to be a small shack in the middle of Konoha's forest. Immediately, he plopped down next to a tree and opened the large scroll that he had stolen from the Hokage's manor. Let's see, the first technique is multiple shadow replication, read Naruto to himself aloud after surveying the scroll for a few moments. What? I'm not good at replications, whined Naruto to no one in particular. Nonetheless, Naruto's determination to fulfill his mission was all the motivation he needed to start practicing the technique. Mizuki and Iruka arrived in the courtyard of the Hokage mansion to find a large crowd of angry ninjas gathered. The ninjas seemed to be arguing amongst themselves about what to do with Naruto. A few begun to complain to Sarutobi, who was silently listening to the exchange between the mob. Hokage-sama, we cannot let this slide by as just a prank, shouted one of many ninjas gathered at Sarutobi's palace. The scroll of sealing is something dangerous that the first Hokage sealed. If it's used in a bad way, it can cause trouble for us all, warned another ninja. Imagine how much trouble it would be if he carried the scroll outside the village, piped up a third. Indeed, bring Naruto here, instructed Sarutobi after a moment of thought. Yes, sir, chorused the group of mad ninjas before splitting up to search for Naruto at amazing speeds. Once they were gone, Sarutobi returned to his office in silence. Upon arrival, he began to rummage through an old chest in search of his crystal ball. Soon after finding it, he took a seat at his desk and slowly poured his chakra into the shiny glass. The crystal began displaying the location of every ninja he dispatched to look for Naruto. While convenient, the Hokage ignored these images and focused on one ninja in particular. Iruka seemed to move faster than the rest in a desperate mad dash to find the blonde kid. Where did you go, Naruto? Thought Iruka to himself as he raced across the rooftops of the village. Naruto had collapsed in exhaustion after 2 non-stop hours of practicing the forbidden jutsu. Needless to say, he was confident that he had gotten the technique down. Just as Naruto was thinking of moving on to the next technique, he heard the footsteps of someone approaching him. Naruto glanced up in surprise upon seeing Iruka breathing heavily from running around so much. Hey, Naruto, said Iruka in his most dangerous voice. Naruto could only grin sheepishly at being caught so soon. Placing a hand behind his head, Naruto began to chuckle. Iruka, failing to see the humor in the situation, placed his fist on his hips as he waited for an explanation from the blonde youth. Oh man, I got caught already, and I only learned one technique, went Naruto while grinning lamely. Irika surveyed Naruto with a look of surprise and increased respect. Not only was he able to carry out a scroll protected heavily by the Hokage himself, but he practiced here until he was worn out, thought Irika with semi-amusement. Your potential is simply astounding, Naruto. Hey Irika-sensei, I'm going to show you a great technique. So let me graduate if I could do it. If I show you a technique from this scroll, I can graduate, right? Questioned Naruto abruptly, breaking Irika's train of thought. The boy was practically bouncing with excitement, but something was bothering Irika. Who told you that? Asked Irika. Mizuki-sensei. He told me about this place and this scroll, replied Naruto excitedly while indicating the nearby cabin. Mizuki did this, thought Irika in disbelief. Suddenly, Irika noticed motion in the corner of his eyes. Acting on instinct alone, Irika knocked Naruto aside. Quickly, he turned in the direction of the movement and braced himself for impact. The raining wave of kunai passed quickly, but several of them pinned bits of Irika's clothing to the cabin wall. However, the real damage came from a lone kunai that planted itself firmly in Irika's right leg. Irika winced in pain while cradling his injured leg with his free right hand. I'm surprised you found out about this place, came a familiar voice. I see. So that's how it is, Mizuki, growled Irika as he gazed in the direction of the voice. Naruto also looked in the direction Irika was gazing in to find Mizuki standing in a tree. Mizuki still wore his warm smile, but it seemed much more menacing than he remembered. As if sensing Naruto's stare, Mizuki turned his head in Naruto's direction. Naruto, hand over the scroll, he demanded. Hey, what's going on around here? Asked Naruto with confusion evident in his voice as his gaze wandered back and forth between Irika and Mizuki. Irika didn't reply at first, and he closed his eyes in concentration. Irika's breathing slowly grew more rapid as he loosened the kunai logged in his leg. Soon he was gasping for breath as the pain in his leg intensified. Finally, he opened his eyes, and with a quick jerk, he freed the sharp tool from his limb and tossed it aside. Irika continued to breath for a moment before finally speaking. Naruto, don't let him get the scroll no matter what. That's a dangerous scroll that has forbidden techniques. Mizuki used you so he could get a hold of it, explained Irika while never taking his eyes off of Mizuki. Naruto immediately dropped into a fighting pose as he growled angrily at Mizuki. I can't believe he tricked me. I should have spotted it at once, berated Naruto mentally to himself at his own stupidity. Mizuki smirked at the thought of crushing an insignificant insect like Naruto and brushed off his intimating glare. Naruto, Irika is afraid of you possessing that scroll, instigated Mizuki. Naruto was still letting the fact that Mizuki had betrayed his trust sink in, and he didn't immediately grasp what Mizuki was implying. What? Said Naruto in confusion as he glanced at Irika, as if hoping to see the truth reflected in his face. What are you saying, Mizuki? Demanded Irika as he rested his weight against the cabin wall. Irika glanced at Naruto before speaking with a definite note of desperation in his voice. Don't believe him, Naruto, begged Irika. Mizuki laughed openly at Irika's helplessness before speaking again. I'll tell you the truth, decided Mizuki with a hint of malice in his voice. Don't, screamed Irika as he realized what Mizuki was going to do. Mizuki ignored him and began speaking directly to Naruto. A rule was created after the accident that occurred 12 years ago, Mizuki began. A rule? Asked Naruto in confusion once again. That's right, it's a rule that only you, Naruto, cannot find out about, continued Mizuki. Only me? What's that rule? Asked Naruto curiously. Stop it, Mizuki, screamed Irika in one last desperate attempt to hide the truth from Naruto. Like before, Mizuki ignored Irika and began grinning evilly. It's the rule not to say that Naruto is a monster fox. Time seemed to stand still and an eerie silence greeted these words as soon as they left Mizuki's lips. Naruto's eyes became as wide as orbs, and his body took on the weight of a newfound burden. He desperately stared at Iruka, as if willing him to deny the truth of Mizuki's words. But he found Iruka's head was bowed in shame. Never before had Naruto ever felt so betrayed. Everyone knew. Naruto asked Iruka sadly. To Naruto's despair, Iruka gave the slightest of nods to his question. That's right. Everyone knows that you're the nine-tailed monster fox that killed Iruka's parents and destroyed our village. You've been deceived by the village people all this time. Didn't you think it was weird for everyone to hate you so much? Chimed in Mizuki with an air of one who had pulled off the crime of the century without getting caught. Something wet rolled down Naruto's cheeks, and realizing he was crying, Naruto grew furious. Naruto's bluish chakra began to swirl wildly around him in his anger. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, screamed Naruto. The suddenly display of chakra seemed to excite Mizuki, and he began taunting Naruto. No one's ever going to recognize you. Even Iruka hates you. Mizuki reached to his back and unfastened one of the large shuriken. Gripping the hand guard carefully, Mizuki began to rotate the massive star while taking aim at the enraged blonde. Die, Naruto! Yelled Mizuki before hurling the oversized shuriken at him. Naruto fell on his butt in fright and tried to crawl away from the incoming projectile. But he knew deep down that there was no chance of escape from the deadly windmill. Suddenly, there was a flash of movement, and Iruka appeared behind Naruto. Duck, Naruto! Demanded Iruka. Now let me told twice, Naruto did just that. There was a loud sound of metal piercing flesh, and Naruto felt something warm and sticky land on his cheek. Naruto glanced behind him to find Iruka laying on top of him. The shuriken was buried in Iruka's back. Why? Was all Naruto could say as he gazed on in horror at the thin trickle of blood dripping from Iruka's mouth. For a moment, Iruka said nothing. Then in a raspy voice, Iruka began to speak. Because you're the same as me. After my parents died, nobody ever complimented me or recognized me. Being the bad student that I was, I screwed up a lot during class because I wanted everyone's attention. I couldn't get anyone's attention when I was a good student. So I acted like an idiot, said Iruka sadly. For the first time, Naruto saw real tears touch his sensei's eyes. Genuine tears of sadness and sorrow steadily flowed down Iruka's cheeks and dripped upon Naruto's face as he opened his heart up to the boy. It was tough, right, Naruto? You were lonely, right? Iruka began to openly cry in front of the subordinate he trusted the most. I'm so sorry, Naruto. You didn't have to feel that way if I had been more aware. Naruto, too, felt the coming of tears at the honesty of his teacher. However, Mizuki soon grew tired of the touching moment between the student and his sensei and attempted to make his presence known again. With a snicker, Mizuki began to speak. Don't make me laugh. Iruka has hated you since the day you killed his parents. You just want to get that scroll back, bellowed Mizuki. Mizuki's words hit home, and Naruto distrustfully gazed at Iruka as he considered the possibility. Immediately, Naruto broke away from Iruka and took off, running into the forest. Naruto! Screamed Iruka desperately at Naruto's retreating back. Mizuki chose that moment to jump out of the tree he was standing in so that he could chase after the boy. But figuring he had a bit of time, Mizuki decided to taunt Iruka some more. Naruto isn't the type to change his mind. I'm certain he's going to take revenge on this village with that scroll. You saw it in his eyes, didn't you? The wrathful eyes of the monster fox. Figuring he had gotten his point across, Mizuki turned to chase after Naruto. Before the blue-haired fiend could take 2 steps, however, Iruka pulled the massive shuriken from his back and spoke. Naruto won't do that, Iruka quietly said before hurling the giant star at Mizuki. With the greatest of ease, Mizuki stepped out of the path of the slow-moving projectile and glared at Iruka. As long as I kill Naruto and get the scroll, I'm okay. I'll take care of you later, promised Mizuki before he gave chase to the blonde kid. I won't let you, was Irika's final thought before he too gave chase. This isn't good. Mizuki told him the secret, worded Sarutobi out loud to himself. The Hokage had been carefully observing the events that had come to pass with keen interest. Needless to say, Sarutobi wasn't pleased with the way things were going. Naruto is more unstable than ever. He might release the power that has been sealed, mused Sarutobi to himself. He also has the scroll of sealing. As long as he possesses it, the possibility that he will unseal himself and turn into the nine-tailed fox is very great. The old man tiredly rubbed his eyes in contemplation before coming to a decision. If that should happen, Naruto must be executed, thought the old man before he resumed watching the events unfold in his crystal ball. I found him. Naruto called Irika to his retreating student. The boy glanced over his shoulders to see Irika chasing after him in the trees. What Mizuki said back, there was all a lie. Hand over the scroll to me. Mizuki is after it, screamed Irika. The boy stopped running, but instead of giving Irika the scroll, Naruto landed a powerful punch to Irika's guts. Irika cried out in both shock and pain before he lost his balance and fell off of the branch he was standing on. Irika landed flat on his back as Naruto gently touched down a few feet away. Naruto was gasping for breath from all of the running he did and fell on his but while cradling the oversized scroll. Irika weakly climbed to his feet from the blow before, in a poof of smoke, Irika transformed into Mizuki. Naruto, how did you know I wasn't Irika? Demanded the furious blue-haired male. Naruto merely laughed before he too went up in smoke. That's because I'm Irika, said the real Irika once the smoke cleared. I see, said Mizuki with new respect for his fellow ninja. Tell me, Irika, what good is there in protecting the one who killed your parents? I'm not going to let an idiot like you get that scroll, Irika said instead of answering Mizuki's question. You're the idiot. Naruto is the same as me, countered Mizuki. Same as you, questioned Irika in mild confusion. Correct. You see, anything is possible with that scroll. There's no way that Naruto, the monster fox, won't use its powers, explained Mizuki. Yeah, you're right. If he was a monster fox, said Irika with emphasis on the word if. Mizuki raised his eyebrow in a quizzical fashion before Irika continued. Naruto is different. He's an excellent student that I've always recognized. Irika paused to smile as he remembered Naruto's good qualities. He's earnest, hardworking, clumsy, and no one has bothered to truly try to acknowledge him. Yet he also knows the pain of others. He's no monster fox. He is Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha, the future Hokage. Mizuki's expression was one of both pity and disbelief at what he was hearing, but it soon turned to anger. Mizuki reached behind him to retrieve his last shuriken. What an idiot. You know, Irika, I said I would kill you later, but I take that back. You can die now, Mizuki yelled before charging at Irika. The distance was closing fast, and Irika slowly closed his eyes in preparation for his fate. Mizuki was practically smiling in victory before he spotted an orange blur out the corner of his eye. Unable to turn in time to defend himself, Mizuki was rewarded with a knee rammed into his chin. Mizuki flew back several feet, head first while the giant shuriken went flying into the treetops. Mizuki cried out in pain after he landed, and Irika opened his eyes at the sound. Naruto, gasped Irika in surprise. Damn you, moaned Mizuki while rubbing his smarting chin. Naruto stood to his full height, and for once even Mizuki was a bit intimidated by the power the boy seemed to radiate. Don't lay a finger on Irika-sensei. I'll kill you if you do, growled Naruto savagely. He must have been listening to the conversation, realized Irika. Naruto, you've come to protect me. Irika smiled in pride at his student. Mizuki was still a bit unnerved, but quickly started trash talking anyway, convinced that it had just been a lucky fluke. Talk while you can, punk. I'll finish a kid like you in a flash. Mizuki shook a fist at Naruto. Naruto changed his stance and formed a cross using his index and middle fingers on both hands. Try, jerk. I'll do 1,000 times more damage back to you, shot back Naruto. Why don't you try if you can, you monster fox, countered Mizuki heatedly. Kagebunshin no jutsu, yelled Naruto before several clouds of smoke appeared all around him. When the smoke cleared, Mizuki and Irika looked on in amazement to see the clearing filled with Narutos. Naruto, you've used the shadow replication? Irika's amazed look turned into a thrilled smile. To have learned such a high-level technique on his own in just a matter of hours, and to be able to use it on such an enormous scale utterly smashed any doubts that the kid had what it took to become a legend. Each of the copies were actual bodies fully capable of carrying out the inevitable action of kicking Mizuki's skinny arse to the moons. Mizuki didn't know which way to turn. Everywhere he looked there was a Naruto. There must have been at least 100 of them. What's the matter? Come and get me, chorused all of the Narutos in unison. After spinning around so much, Mizuki fell flat on his, but as he lost balance, he took on an expression of pure terror when he realized he was completely outmatched, by the dead last of the class, no less. If you're not coming, we're coming, said some of the Narutos as they all started cracking their knuckles. Lord save me, was Mizuki's last thought before the army of Narutos pounced. In the darkest corner of Konoha's forest, a sissy girl's scream could be heard. Mizuki's face was a bloody pulp, and several of his teeth were missing, but other than that, no severe damage had been inflicted. Still, Naruto couldn't help but sheepishly grin while rubbing the back of his head. Maybe I hurt him too much, said Naruto between laughter. Arika-sensei, are you all right? Asked Naruto after turning his full attention on his teacher. Yeah, replied Irika. Irika could only smile proudly at his student. What a guy. He really might surpass all of the Hokages, thought Irika with amusement. Irika groaned slightly as his back gave a painful throb, but his smile didn't waver. Naruto, come here for a second. I want to give you something, requested Irika. Curiously, Naruto stepped forward to see what Irika wanted to give him. Mizuki's unconscious form remained forgotten in the wake of the rising sun. Once Naruto got close enough, Irika spoke. Close your eyes, Naruto. The mob of ninjas had returned to the Hokage mansion after an unsuccessful search of the village. Did anyone find Naruto? Asked one of the ninjas once everyone was present. No, replied several of the ninjas in defeat. Damn, this isn't good, complained another. Suddenly, a deep voice spoke over the crowd. There's no need to worry anymore, announced the Hokage, who arrived unnoticed in the square. Hokage-sama, what are you saying? Questioned one ninja in shock. Sarutobi merely smiled at the question and gazed in the direction of the forest. He'll come home soon, was all the elderly man said. Sensei, are you done yet? Asked Naruto impatiently with his eyes shut. All right, you can open your eyes now, replied Irika. Slowly, Naruto opened his eyes and squinted in the light of the rising sun. Once his eyes adjusted, Naruto noticed that Irika wasn't wearing his forehead protector. Also, Naruto's goggles were grasped in Irika's hand. Realization dawned on Naruto before Irika spoke. Congratulations, you graduate, said Irika with a smile. Naruto's mouth opened in shock, and for the longest he stood flabbergasted before Irika. All right, let's celebrate. I'll treat you to some ramen, said Irika before, without warning, an orange blur tackled him to the ground. Irika-sensei, cried Naruto happily. Ouch, that hurts, Naruto, moaned Irika after landing painfully on his back with Naruto hugging his waist. Still, Irika smiled, despised the pain, and begun to playfully wrestle with Naruto. All the while, Irika's thoughts remained on what he wanted to say to his former student. Naruto, I was going to lecture you on how it gets harder from here on as a ninja, but I'll keep it until we get to the ramen shop. Hey, who everyone? This is your host and writer Ananine, the legendary Fox Demon speaking. I hope you guys enjoyed my first attempt at writing a Naruto fanfic. Hopefully the end results many months from now, when the story comes to an end, will be worth every keystroke. I'll try my best to make this one of the best fics you guys have ever read. I'm also looking forward to all of the awesome reviews and seeing how my writing skills improve down the road. For your convenience and my own personal fun, the development of Naruto and most characters will be displayed in a special ranking system as shown. E rank, not worth mentioning. D- rank, amateur Genin skill level. D rank, mid-level Genin skill level. D plus rank, elite Genin skill level. C- rank, novice Chunin skill level. C rank, seasoned Chunin skill level. C plus rank, elite Chunin skill level. B- rank, rookie Jounin skill level. B rank, advanced Jounin to ANBU skill level. B plus rank, elite Jounin to ANBU vice captain skill level. A minus rank, ANBU captain skill level. A rank, badass shinobi. A plus rank, extreme badass. S rank, kage level. Sub-levels U, OM, and G ranks, ultimate ninja. Simple enough, right? There will also be something I call focus gauge, but I'll explain that later. Okay, here's a quick question to help you guys get started with the reviews. How did I do with the introduction of two of my special characters? It was pretty tough coming up with a way to include them this early in the FIC without throwing the original story off, so I hope I did an okay job. Even now, I'm already planning how I want to pull off Chapter 2. I can't wait to get started. Now, on to the disclaimer. I do not, have not, and will not ever own any part of the anime Naruto. The only characters that are mine and mine alone are Domino Shishikura, Elaine Harime, and a few others that I'll introduce later on. All Naruto characters and elements beyond that belong to Bandai and its creator. See you guys in Chapter 2, and don't forget to review. Tata now. I am Konoha Maru. It had been 2 days since Naruto had graduated from Konoha's Ninja Academy, and each passing day was better than the last. The first day was spent in the hospital with Iruka, who was getting treated from the injuries inflicted on him by Mizuki. To Naruto's relief, none of the wounds were serious, and Iruka would be released from the hospital the next day. Even better yet, a really cute nurse gave Naruto an entire jar of candy as a reward for graduating from the academy. The next day, Iruka treated Naruto to ramen at the Ichiraka ramen shop to celebrate Iruka's release from the hospital, although his sensei kept complaining about how itchy his bandages were the whole time. However, today was a very important day for Naruto. He was going to register and receive his ninja license at the academy. Feeling that he should alter his looks for the occasion, Naruto had spent 3 hours applying paint to his hands and face. The result was an evil-looking mime with red spirals on his cheeks and fingertips and various markings covering his face. Once he was ready, Naruto made his way to the Hokage's mansion first to have his I.D picture taken. "Hey, are you really going to have your picture taken with that face?" asked the photographer. The photographer was an overweight elderly man with a gray ring of hair that crowned a bald patch on top of his head. The photographer's beady eyes were magnified a bit by his enormous spectacles. He was wearing a green button-down shirt with a pair of black slacks. He was currently frowning at Naruto's idea of a good picture as he leaned on an old-fashioned shutterbox. "Don't worry about it. Just take it," said Naruto excitedly. "Geez, just don't regret it later," complained the photographer with an annoyed grunt. The photographer moved under the covering that would protect the picture from light and readied the flash button. "Okay, say cheese," said the photographer. Immediately, Naruto struck the meanest pose he could think of just as the flash went off. Sarutobi was scanning Naruto's registration form while the blonde sat before him with a pleased grin on his face. Prior to turning in his registration form, Naruto had made sure to wash off his frightening paint job. He now appeared just like normal with his goggles perched upon his forehead. Hobby: to pull pranks. Favorite food is ramen, especially miso ramen. Date of birth: October 10th. Age: 12 years old. Sign: Libra. Registration number: 102607. Saratobi raised his eyes quizzically at Naruto's I.D picture, drawing a chuckle from the boy. I couldn't make a nice face, so it took 3 hours to make it look like that. Still, isn't it artistic or like cool? Bragged Naruto while flashing the thumbs up sign. Take it over, said the third with a sigh. No, moaned Naruto in protest. Retake the picture, repeated Sarutobi more firmly. No way, replied Naruto stubbornly. The two ninjas begun to glare at each other before without warning. Hinge, cried Naruto while making a hand seal. Naruto went up in a poof of smoke before he reappeared as the perky blonde girl again. Just like before, the remaining smoke kept certain visuals hidden from sight. Hokage-sama, please, begged the girl in her most seductive moan. The old man blinked stupidly for a few moments before his nose began spurting blood. Saratobi jerked back in his chair and comically fell over. He remained on the ground twitching for a few moments while Naruto changed back to normal. After a minute, the shaken-up old man picked himself up off the ground and begun to clean his nose with a handkerchief. The temptation technique, one absurd technique, grumbled Saratobi in annoyance. Naruto began to chuckle while placing a hand behind his head. He wasn't quite sure how to respond to that, so he said nothing. By the way, Naruto, where is your forehead protector? Asked Saratobi. I'm not going to wear it until the explanatory meeting since it will get scratched, replied Naruto while rubbing his old goggles. I see. Well, putting that aside, this ninja registration form is something of utmost secrecy that will remain in the village. Therefore, it is an important document even to you, said Saratobi. The third glanced at Naruto's registration form again. So what is with this face? Asked the third. Naruto ignored Saratobi's question and voiced instead what was on his mind. I don't understand those complex things, whined Naruto. Suddenly, there was a glint of light flashing from the doorway of the classroom. Both Naruto and Saratobi stared at the figure who burst into the room, waving a mini shuriken wildly. Fight me, you old geezer, yelled a small kid as he charged. The kid was wearing a yellow t-shirt with the Konoha leaf symbol on the front. He was also wearing a pair of tan shorts and what appeared to be a safety helmet on his head. The boy was also wearing a long blue scarf that seemed to sway in some non-existent breeze as he moved. A long brown ponytail stuck out the back of the boy's helmet, and his brown eyes seemed to radiate with determination. The title of Hokage belongs to me, Konohamaru, was the last thing the kid shouted before he tripped and fell flat on his face. The hell? Who is this kid? Thought Naruto to himself as the kid rolled on the ground, cradling his head. Itai, moaned Konohamaru in pain. Problems just keep showing up, thought Saratobi with a resigned sigh as he sucked quietly on his pipe. The sound of footsteps approached the room rapidly before a tall, lanky man entered the room. The man had brown hair that was mostly covered by a navy blue bandana. He wore a pair of dark sunglasses that hid his brown eyes, as well as a navy blue sweatsuit. His name was Ebisu. Ebisu's mouth opened in shock upon finding Konohamaru laying on the floor. The little ninja climbed into a sitting position and rubbed his head a bit before speaking. Is this a trap? Demanded Konohamaru. Ebisu looked quickly around the room before replying. Are you all right, young master? Oh, and there are no traps, by the way. The kid turned towards Naruto after noticing him for the first time. Ebisu did the same before gasping in surprise. This kid is the nine-tailed demon fox. The dropout I really hate, thought the lanky man to himself before adapting a knowing smirk. Konohamaru stomped up to Naruto and pointed an accusing finger at his face. I got it. You did something, didn't you? He demanded angrily. Naruto's reaction was unexpected. He quickly grabbed the collar of the kid's shirt and lifted him an inch into the air. Anger was written all over the Naruto's face, and a vein was throbbing in his temple. You just tripped on your own, bellowed Naruto heatedly. Hey, let go of him. He's the great-grandson of the third Hokage, cried the tall man. Naruto anger lessened a bit as he took in this information, but he had yet to release Konohamaru. He glanced back and forth between Saratobi and the brat as if searching for a resemblance. He stopped right after he found out I was the grandson of a Hokage. He must be just like Ebisu-sensei and everyone else, thought Konohamaru with a grin. What's the matter? Why don't you hit me if you can? You're no match for the grandson of a Hokage, taunted Konohamaru. Like I care about that. You idiot, roared Naruto before he punched the kid as hard as he could in the head. This guy was Konohamaru's last thought before he blacked out. What have you done? Wailed Ebisu. Sarutobi merely rubbed his eyes tiredly before dismissing Naruto with a wave of his hand. It was 10 minutes later before Konohamaru awakened with a splitting headache. Immediately, he glanced around the room in search of the blonde jerk who hit him. Young master, you've awakened, said the lanky man happily. That guy, where is he? Asked Konohamaru quietly. Young master, you are the grandson of a Hokage. Even though he hit you, you mustn't get involved with a guy like him. No good will come out of it. I, the elite teacher Ebisu, am never wrong, said Ebisu firmly. Konohamaru suddenly found the floor to be very interesting as a sensei worked his way into a rant that he had heard many times before. You wish to become the 5th Hokage, right? If I teach you ninja techniques, it will be easy to gain the title of Hokage, declared Ebisu in a manner that suggested he had practiced this speech many times. Konohamaru still hadn't looked up from the floor yet. Yes, the quickest path to becoming a Hokage is to learn from me, droned on Ebisu as he turned a bit to push his sunglasses further upon his nose. Do you understand, young master? Asked the man when he turned back around. Konohamaru was nowhere in sight. Ebisu looked around the room for his student before he grasped his head in panic. He's gone, cried Ebisu. At this moment, Sarutobi finally spoke up. It looks like he went to follow Naruto, he said while taking a drag on his pipe and exhaling the sweet perfumed scent. What? I'm about to find him, wailed Ebisu before dashing out the classroom. Young master, wait for me. How did he grow up to be like that? That was the 20th ambush today. It worries me even more when he's with Naruto. I hope he doesn't teach Konohamaru weird things, thought Sarutobi to himself when the footsteps of Ebisu faded completely. Do you want me to keep an eye on Naruto? Asked a voice outside of the classroom. Yes, please do. Jinmu, replied Sarutobi before a reddish blur dashed past the door. The nerve of that kid, fumed Naruto to himself as he walked home. Hey, Naruto, called a familiar soft voice. Naruto turned to find Elaine and Domino walking towards him. Elaine waved her arm in greeting while Naruto returned the gesture. I've heard that you've graduated, said Elaine with a pleased smile. Yeah, the chef at Ichika wouldn't stop talking about it, chimed in Domino with a gorgeous smile that also radiated pleasure. Naruto modestly rubbed the back of his head happily at his friend's praise. Yeah, well, Irika-sensei passed me after I beat up that Mizuki creep, replied Naruto with a chuckle. Mizuki-sensei? I thought I was picking up bad vibes from that guy, said Elaine thoughtfully. Right, and here I was thinking he was cute, said Domino with a huff that caused the others to sweat drop. Okay, well anyway, Naruto, did you turn in your registration form? Asked Elaine. Yep, I was just on my way from the academy to get some ramen. There was some weird kid there who tried to attack old man Hokage, replied Naruto with a frown. Let me guess. He had brown hair, a blue scarf, a safety helmet, and a really stupid-looking face? Listed Domino, while ticking off her fingers. Yeah, that's the kid, replied Naruto. Ah, that must have been Konohamaru-san, stated Elaine with a sigh. He has been giving the third a lot of trouble lately. Really, he just seems plain stupid to me. He even tripped over his own feet, said Naruto while his eyebrow twitched. That's our Konohamaru for you, said Domino with a chuckle while playfully sticking out her tongue. Naruto laughed. Say, do you guys want to join me for some ramen? Asked Naruto with a grin. I would love to, said both girls in unison. Suddenly Elaine sighed. But Domino and I have to run a lot of errands today, but maybe we can have lunch together tomorrow? Elaine asked hopefully. All right, that'll be great, replied Naruto with a grin. Wonderful, said Domino happily. I'll see if I can get Jimaru to make lunch and come with us. Jimaru, asked Naruto in confusion. Oh yeah, you two never met. Jimaru is Domino's boyfriend, as well as the leader of our team. He's also an excellent cook, explained Elaine with a smile. You three are in a team? Asked Naruto in surprise. That's right, but we'll give you all the details at lunch tomorrow. Don't be late, or I'll never forgive, said Domino with a playful wink. We've better get going. See you later, Naruto, said Elaine before she and Domino walked off. Naruto resumed, walking once his friends had rounded the corner. Nothing eventful happened for the next 3 minutes, and Naruto was just considering stopping for ice cream, when suddenly he heard the sound of footsteps. Naruto glanced over his shoulder to see a pair of feet jutting out from beneath a camouflage cover. Apparently, someone was stalking him. Figuring that this person was trying to play a lame joke on him, Naruto resumed walking. Naruto had gone no farther than 5 steps before he heard the footsteps again. This time they sounded closer than before. In annoyance, Naruto turned around to yell at his newfound shadow. Don't follow me. What do you want? Demanded Naruto shrilly. Like before, the stalker had donned a camouflage covering and pressed up against a wall. Naruto's eyebrow twitched in irritation when he spotted a familiar ponytail sticking out of the covering like a sore thumb. That's really obvious, you know, said Naruto after seeing Konohamaru's pitiful attempt to conceal himself. Konohamaru chuckled before uncovering his face. Nice job detecting me. I should have expected it from the guy I heard rumors about, said the pint-sized ninja in training as he folded up his camouflage covering. Once he tucked it safely away in his pocket, he approached Naruto and pointed at him. I don't mind being your follower, announced the kid abruptly. What? Asked Naruto in confusion. Konohamaru pretended that he hadn't heard him and continued speaking. In return, tell me how to do the temptation technique you used to defeat the Hokage geezer, demanded Konohamaru. Naruto folded his arms before he more or less told Konohamaru no. Don't say that. Please, boss, begged Konohamaru. The kid had said the magic word. Boss, all right, then you've got a deal, replied Naruto with a grin. After stopping first to get some ramen, Naruto and Konohamaru went to the village's shopping district to prepare the bratty kid for his training. All right, listen up. First, in order to use a ninja technique, well, you need to be able to use your Chadora well, explained Naruto as they walked. Chatora? Isn't that a brown tiger, boss? I thought it was called chakra, said Konohamaru in confusion. Naruto begun to panic at his error before hastily speaking. Shut up. Good ninjas call it Chadora, Naruto lied. Really? So that's how it is, replied Konohamaru excitedly. Man, I'm glad he's stupid, thought Naruto to himself as he wiped his brow with the sleeves of his jacket. Yeah, now listen. Chakra is, begun Naruto, using the correct word this time, before he was cut off by Konohamaru. Simply put, it is the energy used to execute a technique, explained Konohamaru before he withdrew a manual from his pocket. In other words, the body uses both the energy found in every single cell as well as spirit energy that accumulates through training and experience. After mixing the two energies together and forming a hand seal, a technique can be executed. Read Konohamaru. Don't act like you know everything when you're just reading from a scroll, shouted Naruto. Sorry, boss, said Konohamaru with a nervous chuckle. Anyway, although that thing goes on and on about it, you just need 2 things to use a technique well, explained Naruto in a much calmer tone. What are those, boss? Asked Konohamaru. Hard work and guts, replied Naruto simply. Hard work and guts, repeated Konohamaru in understanding. That's right, and I plan to train you hard, so prepare yourself, warned Naruto. Roger that, boss, said Konohamaru with a salute. Great, that's the right attitude to have. Now try transforming so I can see how good your ninja techniques are, ordered Naruto with a grin. He was clearly enjoying the power he had over the kid. All right, but what should I transform into? Asked the ninja in training. Naruto glanced around for a moment before he pointed to a beautiful woman near a fruit stand. The woman was wearing a purple kimono with a black leotard underneath. She had long red hair that was tied into a ponytail. To say the least, she appeared very curvy. "There, transform into that babe," ordered Naruto. "Right, it'll be my pleasure," said Konohamaru confidently. Konohamaru carefully observed the woman, like an artist who was getting ready to paint a model before he made a hand seal. "Hinge!" cried the boy before he went up in smoke. When the cloud cleared, Naruto was shocked to find a rather ugly-looking copy of the woman. Konohamaru's transformation resulted in a rather plump-looking monster with a huge zit in the center of her forehead. Konohamaru also had a fuzzy patch of hair beneath his chin and a pair of squashed-looking lips. "Well, do I look like her?" asked Konohamaru. "Yes, sure. The clothes and hair looks perfect," replied a repulsed Naruto. "What's so similar?" growled a voice behind Naruto. Naruto turned in time to catch a fist in the face from the angry woman that dropped him like a stack of potatoes before she turned to Konohamaru, who had changed back to normal. "Listen, young master. Please do a cuter transformation next time you turn into me, okay?" asked the woman with a cheery smile before she walked off with a wave. "She's scary," thought Konohamaru nervously. Naruto groaned in pain from his new residence on the ground. "Why did I have to be hit?" whined Naruto pathetically. After spending a few minutes making sure that there was no lasting damage to his face, Naruto had escorted Konohamaru to an adult bookstore. "Okay, we're going to research pheromones here," declared Naruto. "Roger, boss," Konohamaru said before saluting Naruto. Naruto opened the door to the shop and peered cautiously inside. Naruto grinned upon finding the shop owner sound asleep. Naruto beckoned Konohamaru into the store, and the duo immediately made a beeline to the swimsuit section. Naruto picked up a magazine and started flipping through the content with a drool while Konohamaru peeked over his shoulder. So engrossed the two were in the book that they never heard the shop owner coming. "Ahem, I told you that there's no browsing in the store, Naruto," growled the owner much to the horror of Naruto. "Run for it, Konohamaru!" screamed Naruto, but the tiny ninja was nowhere in sight. Haven already dashed out the store when he wasn't looking. Naruto tried to escape as well, but unfortunately, he didn't get so lucky. Naruto felt the shop owner grab the collar of his jacket and spin him around. The last thing Naruto saw was a fist aimed at his right eye before he knew no more. Naruto had been tossed head first out the store and rendered unconscious for over an hour. Naruto knew from the sharp pain and swelling around his eye that it had been blackened. Still despised the pain and enduring a few ice packs, Naruto continued with Konohamaru's lesson. This time the blonde prankster took Konohamaru to a popular ladies' bathhouse. "This is the last place, so let's put our sprit into it," announced Naruto to his worried follower. "Okay," said Konohamaru uncertainly. "You remember the plan, right?" asked Naruto, to which Konohamaru nodded. "All right, then let's do it." "Hinge!" both ninjas cried before being consumed by smoke. When the smoke cleared, both boys were transformed into their female counterparts. Also, they were still wearing their regular clothes. With a nod, the two entered the bathhouse. The moment the bathing ladies spotted Naruto's clothes, they began screaming in outrage. They pounced upon the hapless boy and buried him under a mountain of punching and kicking bodies. Konohamaru, as usual, had ran out of the shop, leaving his blonde sensei to get pounded and forcefully tossed out of the bathhouse where he was waiting. "Why am I the one getting pounded?" thought Naruto as he painfully crawled to his feet in his normal form. Wordlessly, Naruto beckoned Konohamaru to follow him into Konoha's forest for training. They had arrived at the cabin that Mizuki had told Naruto about before. For the most part, Naruto had taken it over as a training center and rest house. "I'm sorry," said Konohamaru to the surprise of Naruto. "It's because I'm the grandson of a Hokage that all this happened to you," said Konohamaru in a guilty tone. "Don't worry about it," said Naruto, while waving away the apology. "Anyway, preparations for the sexy technique are now complete. All you need to do now is practice," announced Naruto with a thumbs up. "Okay, boss," beamed Konohamaru. "All right, let's review. The basics are big breast, thin waist, and big bottom. Now show me what you got, bellowed Naruto while pumping a fist into the air. Roger, boss, said Konohamaru before he took on a look of concentration. Hinge, cried Konohamaru. When the smoke cleared, Konohamaru appeared as the same ugly woman from before, but this time he was wearing pink lingerie that seemed a size too small. No, shouted Naruto. Do it again, but thinner this time, he ordered. Right, Hinge, cried Konohamaru again. When the smoke cleared, Konohamaru appeared with a beautiful body, but his face was still just as ugly as before. How's this, boss? Asked Konohamaru. Better, but make it more beautiful, requested Naruto. Okay, Hinge, cried Konohamaru a third time. He now had a more beautiful face, but he still had the large zit and beard. This is going to take a while, thought Naruto with a sigh. Naruto, what is he planning to do with my young master? Wondered Ebisu as he glanced around from atop the Hokage monument. The lanky man had been searching for a student for over 3 hours and still hadn't caught head or tail of him. Who knows what kind of horrible habits he's picking up from that boy? Ebisu winced at the thought. Damn it, where did he go? Cried Ebisu in frustration. I am an elite teacher who has taught many Hokage candidates. Any bug who attaches to my student will be eliminated, was Ebisu's final thought as he hatefully pictured Naruto's face. In a flash of movement, Ebisu resumed his search for his lost pupil. It had been a half an hour since Konohamaru started practicing the sexy technique. Feeling a bit parched, Naruto and Konohamaru took a break and went to a vending machine for some sodas. The two ninjas sat down in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Konohamaru has sure come a long way. He'll master the technique in no time at this rate, thought Naruto with a smile. He glanced at his follower for a second before he voiced what was on his mind. By the way, kid, why are you so obsessed with old man Hokage? Asked Naruto. Konohamaru looked up in surprise at the question before adapting a somber expression. Grandpa gave me my name, which he took off of the village. But even though it's a name that everyone in the village should have heard many times, nobody calls me by it. Whenever anyone sees me, they only see the grandson of a Hokage. I hate that. Nobody sees me as an individual, so that's why I want the title of Hokage right now, said Konohamaru with determined eyes. Naruto, who had been listening the whole time, suddenly gained increased respect for the boy. He took a swig of his drink before speaking. Idiot. Who's going to recognize a guy like you? Said Naruto bluntly. What was that? Demanded Konohamaru heatedly. You keep saying Hokage, but it's not a title that a kid can carry so easily, you know. However, if you want that title so badly, Naruto grinned. Then you'll have to defeat me first, he declared. Sarutobi gazed upon the Hokage monument in silence. However, he was really thinking about Naruto and his grandson. I've been looking for you, third, greeted a voice from behind him. Sarutobi didn't have to turn around to find out who it was. Yes, Irika, asked Sarutobi. Did Naruto turn in his registration form properly? Asked Irika as he approached his mentor. Yes, he did, replied Sarutobi as he felt cheeks grow warm from the events of that morning. Luckily, Irika couldn't tell by looking at his back. That's good. I lectured him at the ramen shop a few days ago, but he's been so happy about becoming a ninja that I don't think he heard a word I said Irika with a chuckle. Indeed, but Naruto's dream might be tough for him, said Sarutobi after a moment of thought. Oh, why's that? Asked Irika. As you know, only the adults that fought 12 years ago know that a 9-tailed demon fox is sealed in Naruto, explained Sarutobi. Irika nodded, although the Hokage couldn't see the gesture. I made that fact absolutely secret and severely punished those who broke the rule. Because of that, the children don't know about it. That is the only hope Naruto has really. The fourth Hokage wanted everyone to see Naruto as a hero, a heroic prison for the beast that nearly destroyed us, continued Sarutobi. A hero? Asked Irika, in confusion. What's so heroic about living with a beast like that inside you? He wondered. Sarutobi nodded before continuing. It's amazing, really. The fourth choose a baby that just had an umbilical cord cut off and sealed the fox within him. Naruto became the container for the nine-tailed fox, but the adults of the village do not see Naruto as I do. There are even a few who believe that Naruto is the nine-tailed fox himself. The attitude of these people are being passed down into the children. Poor Naruto, I never knew, realized Irika sadly. Tell me, Irika, have you ever heard of this legend before? Asked the third. What legend, sir? Replied Irika. They say that when a person hates another and does not recognize him, said person's eyes becomes terribly cold when he looks at the other. Irika gasped in shock at the truth behind these words before a single tear rolled down his cheek. There they are, thought Ebisu before he touched down in a nearby tree. I've found you, he called, catching the eyes of the two ninjas. Damn monster fox, thought Ebisu when he saw Naruto sitting next to his student. He hatefully glared at the blonde prankster. Naruto rose into a fighting crouch upon seeing Ebisu's eyes. Those eyes again, why does everyone keep looking at me like that? Thought Naruto angrily. Now, young master, let us go home, said Ebisu after leaping out of the tree he was standing in. No way. I'm going to defeat the geezer right now and get the title of Hokage. Don't bother me, bellowed Konohamaru stubbornly. Now, young master, Hokage is a title you receive when you come to understand the principles of morality, knowledge, loyalty, family, and can perform more than 1,000 techniques, replied Ebisu calmly as he advanced towards his pupil. Konohamaru growled at his sensei before forming a hand seal. Hinge, he cried as a bluish aura of chakra swirled around him. When the smoke cleared, Konohamaru was replaced with a gorgeous and perky girl with light brown hair. Just like Naruto's transformations, the remaining smoke keeps certain visuals hidden from sight. Take that, Oiroke no Jutsu, moaned Konohamaru in a seductive manner while winking at Ebisu. Young master, Ebisu screamed in outrage. What are you thinking using such an indecent technique? Roared Ebisu angrily. Oh man, it didn't work, whined Konohamaru as he reverted back to normal. Of course it didn't work. I am a gentleman. I would never fall for a technique as base as that, fumed Ebisu before he grabbed Konohamaru. Young master, you're only going to get dumber if you hang around with him. Now, let's go. I assure you that the quickest path to becoming a Hokage is to listen to me, he said while dragging the struggling boy along. No, wailed Konohamaru while failing his arms. Kagebunshin no Jutsu, came an unexpected cry. The clearing quickly begun to fill with Narutos, much to the surprise of the struggling student and teacher. Wow, that's amazing, exclaimed Konohamaru with saucer-sized eyes. Ebisu merely smiled in amusement while pushing his sunglasses higher on the bridge of his nose. This is silly. I am an elite teacher even if I do not look like one. I warn you that I'm quite different from Mizuki, bragged Ebisu as he advanced calmly into the midst of Naruto's. He quickly dropped into a battle pose and grinned menacingly at the small platoon of Naruto's. Hinge, cried all the Naruto's as one, before each one was replaced by Naruto's sexy technique. Ebisu's mouth dropped open in shock upon finding himself surrounded by gorgeous perky blondes. Ebisu-sama, they all moaned before latching onto the hapless teacher. Ebisu's nose erupted in twin geysers of blood before he collapsed to the ground twitching. Naruto changed back to normal and all his clones disappeared in a poof of smoke before he struck a victory pose. I call it the harem no jutsu, announced Naruto with a wink. Uzumaki Naruto, I'll be keeping my eyes on you, whispered a shadowy figure standing in a nearby tree before he disappeared in a blur of movement. Did you hear something, Konohamaru? Asked Naruto while he glanced around the area. No, I didn't hear anything, replied Konohamaru in confusion. Naruto gazed into the treetops for a moment longer before he shrugged his shoulders. Guess I must be hearing things, said Naruto. Yeah, but who cares about that? I couldn't defeat Ebisu-sensei again. What am I doing wrong, boss? Whined Konohamaru. Like I said before, it's not that easy. Remember, you're trying to take the title of the ninja that everyone will recognize. In that quest, I'm certain that there will be lots of unpleasant things and battles. I finally have a person who recognizes me, but it wasn't easy to earn that recognition, and it took a lot of work. So I'm saying that you need to be prepared for those trials and to realize that there's no shortcut to becoming Hokage, explained Naruto with a grin. Yeah, don't lecture me like you're all that. As of now, I quit being your follower. We're rivals starting from now on, shot back Konohamaru with a grin as well. Naruto chuckled. Sorry to say, Squirt, but I'm going to be a ninja starting tomorrow. However, I promise to fight with you one day for the title of Hokage. So until then, I'll look forward to it, Konohamaru, said Naruto with a genuine smile. Naruto then turned and began to walk away while waving a hand behind him in farewell. Realizing Naruto had said his name for the first time, Konohamaru smiled before saluting his newfound rival and friend, Asuke, Sakura, and the Dragon Lord. A new day dawned on the hidden village of Konoha, and it was a day of great importance for the graduates of the Ninja Academy. In a shabby apartment, Naruto had just awakened. He stretched his stiff muscles and released a loud yawn before kicking off his covers. Naruto rose out of bed and tossed his bulldog-shaped nightcap aside. Naruto scratched his head for a moment before he remembered that today was the day of the explanatory meeting. With a grin, Naruto went to his small kitchen to prepare breakfast. He quickly heated up a container of instant ready-to-eat ramen and grabbed a carton of milk from his pantry. "Itadakamasu," said Naruto before digging in. Naruto ate fairly quickly without really thinking of anything in particular. When half of the bowl was gone, Naruto took several swigs of milk directly from the carton. Yum, that hit the spot, thought Naruto cheerfully. He polished off the rest of his breakfast and then changed into his clothes. He surveyed himself in the mirror before he realized that something was missing. Hang on, where's my forehead protector? He went to his dresser and opened one of the drawers. With a smile, Naruto retrieved his shiny headband and put on. He looked in the mirror again to see how it looked on him. Hey, who's that good-looking guy? Thought Naruto with a laugh before setting off to the meeting. Naruto was practically humming as he made his way to the academy. His good mood lasted for over 10 minutes before he spotted someone pressed up against the wall, wrapped clumsily in a camouflage cover. Don't tell me, thought Naruto before the hidden person tossed the veil aside. Fight me, demanded Konohamaru shrilly. He was just about to rush at Naruto before he tripped over his discarded cover and fell flat on his face. Are you all right? What in the world are you doing, Konohamaru? Asked Naruto while the pint-sized ninja struggled to untangle his legs from his veil. I expected nothing less from the man I respect, said Konohamaru between grunts as he tried to tug the cover off. Okay, but I didn't do anything, said Naruto in annoyance. Konohamaru finally freed himself with a jerk before rising into a battle pose. All right, now let's fight fair and square, cried Konohamaru. Sorry, Squirt, but I have to go to an explanatory meeting now. Perhaps some other time, replied Naruto while rubbing his head apologetically. Explanatory meeting, repeated Konohamaru in confusion. That's right. I'm a ninja starting today, remember? Replied Naruto while pointing to his forehead protector. Konohamaru gasped in awe, drawing a grin from the older ninja. Far across town, Haruno Sakura was humming a tune to herself while securing her forehead protector in place. She stared at herself in her mirror before winking seductively. Looking good, she thought with a giggle. Sakura, shouldn't you be leaving now? Called Sakura's mother in a worried tone.